Okay, and this is a supplementary video to kind of fill in some of the gaps of my previous video. As you might have noticed, we're having a little bit of problems with the recording technology, and so I managed to get that fixed. And I wanted to fill in some important gaps because I want to make sure that you're able to use these tools that I'm showing you. Now, first of all, we're going to go back to the explosion because basically I covered everything needed to make the explosion, but I want to talk about what you can actually do with it creatively. We're going to try something different. Okay, so here we are again at the explosion. So if I go in here, and once again, I go to my platform there, because I didn't save this from the, and I go to my FX tools. Platform is a static body. And we're just going to deal with this, and we're going to call that a parts body. We've already fractured it. You can see the fractures. And I'm going to give this 300 frames in which to do its dirty work. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit this. I'm going to take it to the 300 frame, and I will edit out the part where we're waiting. Okay, so you can see that the fragments have gone everywhere. Now we're not using a force this time. So to show you what that looks like, here we go like that, smash. Okay, so what's different though? Let's say we go to our virtual progressive render. And so now we can see, you can see that nice quality. You can see that nice image quality of the fragments. Now what we want to do is we want to talk about how you can actually use that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the surface editor, which gives us this. Now you'll notice we suddenly have two different surfaces. Default, because we never actually set a surface for anything else, and interior. So the default, I'm going to change the color to blue. Now once I do that, because we didn't actually assign any surfaces, everything becomes blue. So let's go back into the model at this point and go to layer 1, which is this. And so if we were going to, first of all, I've got to get into polygon mode. If we're going to select everything here, change the surface, I'm going to call this table, and let's see what that does. So now, and as sometimes happens with Lightwave, we get a little bit of an issue here because for some reason changing the surface makes it rethink all the dynamics. And so we're going to have to let it do that again. But before we do that, I want to go to interior and basically look at what the inside of the fragments are going to look like. So we'll leave it here in frame 1 so that we can get this stuff right. So the interior right now is white. So let me give it a yellow color. So if that's the case, if I take it down to a certain point, we won't go far, we'll see that the fragments show up not as gray, but as yellow. So let's see what that does. And so you can see our ball has yellow inside it. And so that's fine. But we want to actually do a little bit more than that. So for example, let's give the table, I'm going to go to table, I'm going to give that specularity and glossiness, and I'm also going to give it some reflection. So now it's reflecting the broken pieces. And maybe instead of a white table, we'll make it kind of a green table or something like that. I don't know why I want to do that, but that's good enough for now. So let's say we go to the default surface now and make that shiny as well. Make this like a gumball or something, or a glass ball. And we can even make that reflective too if we want to go nuts. And so if we do that, we'll see that the surface has become different. Now what I wanted to think about is the interior surface. And so I'm going to try something here. Let's say I go to concrete surface. Concrete surface. And let's see what I can get for concrete surfaces. So how about something like that. So that is what I want my pieces to look like. So I'm going to save that image, and I'm just going to save it like that. And so if we're over here, if I'm in the interior, now I can go to my surface, and in this case I will probably start with something cubic just to see if that works. I'm going to load the image, and so we get that picture there, and I hit automatic sizing. So now we can see it has that concrete look to it. And I'm going to go ahead and use that texture that way. But I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to go to my bump map and do the same thing. So I will choose the cubic surface, and I will load the same image, and I will hit automatic sizing, and I will give it some texture amplitude so that that surface has a nice rough look to it. And so now suddenly our rocks look better. So now if we're back at the starting place and I hit the play button, you can see our ball breaks up into these little pieces of concrete. And if this were fully rendered, that would look a whole lot better. And if I pause at any given place, you can see what it would look like. Okay, so one other thing. I wanted to add some magic to this that's a little bit different than this. And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to rethink at this for a moment. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to get rid of this object because I'm tired of looking at it. And I'm going to go to my fragments and get rid of them as well. And so we're going to start with just the simple ball like we had in the first place. So there again is our table, and I'm going to create a ball, just like I did the last time. And if I go to my numeric pad, I can, let's say I make that one 12 by 12 by 12. So it's a complete ball. And this time I will go ahead and give it a surface. I'm just going to call that surface ball. And I will let the fragments determine the inner surface. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to then copy this. I'm going to go to another layer here and paste it. And I'm going to put the original ball in preview. And then I'm just going to shrink this one down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this ball hollow. And that should give me the effect I want. So if I'm on the big ball, put the little ball in the center, and I go to construct, Boolean, subtract. Now I've got a hollow ball. And so then I'm going to take my hollow ball, and I'm going to multiply it by giving it that fracture. Now this time, maybe instead of 100 pieces, let's only do 50. Well, actually, let's take it down to 30 so that it doesn't take forever. And when I do that, I get my fragments. And so, once again, I'm going to go back to the original hollow ball, get rid of that. So there's my fragments. I want to put something in the ball. And so let's see what we can find. Okay, so I have opened this object, which is a dice, or a die, whatever you want to call it. So I am going to copy this die, and then I'm going to go back to the original object that I was working on, and I'm going to put this in preview, and I'm going to put the dice, or the die, inside of the sphere. And there it is. And so while I'm at it, why not have another one? And so, as you can see, I have 2 dice in the sphere, and maybe I'm crazy, but I'll just put 1 more. And I'll move that somewhere out of the way. And so, that sphere now contains 3 dice. Okay, so then if I go back here, everything has changed. My model is now completely different. And so I have a different thing going on. However, the table, if I go into my FX tools and I go to my item properties, I can see that the table considers itself a static body, and layer 4, which is a dice, considers itself a parts body, which I'm going to change that because that's one of the dice. I'm just going to make that rigid. And so then, if I go to layer 2, layer 2 is one of the dice. Layer 2 is one of the dice. I'm going to make that a rigid body as well. Layer 4 is another one of the dice. I'm going to make that a rigid body too. Layer 3 is this, and that will be a parts body. And layer 5 will also make a rigid body. So, what happens if we do that? So we see that the ball smashes and the dice are coming out of it. And the point of doing this is I wanted to show you a few things that you can tweak. Now, first of all, some of those dice are stuck together, which we can probably fix. But notice how this just breaks apart right away. If you go to the item properties and we go to the parts body, you get a few options here. Glue strength. What would happen if I made the parts less easy to break? If I were to take that up to 50 or let's say 87%. Let's see what that does. So if I make it less likely to shatter, it seems to shatter in a different way. It still shatters, but you can actually get it weak enough that it starts to shatter before it even begins falling. And so, if I were to give this, say, 100% glue strength, and we see something that's a lot less interested in falling apart. So it still shatters, but it takes a little bit more of an effort to do it. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning and look at something else. I'm going to go to Surface Editor because I want to see this in a better context. And first of all, I will put my ball. I will add some smoothing to that. And temporarily, I'm going to turn up the transparency because I want to unstick those dice. And so, if I go to layer 2, and I will have to temporarily go here, I want to get that die so that it's not stuck to the others. And so then if I go to layer 3, layer 5, let's just get that one away too. So that's going to change the dynamics. And that will probably do it one more time, just make sure. Okay. So now the die are separated. So we'll go back to Virtual Progressive Render. And I'm going to reduce the transparency. And the ball, we'll make it red this time. And we'll give it all that specularity and the glossiness. You can see we're getting a little bit of those fractures there, which is not particularly nice, but it's okay. And we'll give it some reflection. And now the interior surface. Currently we have that rock surface. We can leave that the same, but just for fun, I'm going to make it radioactive. If I make it glow, let's see what that would do. So it's glowing. And while we're at it, let's give it 100% reflection so that it does something weird. Okay, so that's probably enough. Okay, so this is how it finishes up. So once again, we start at the beginning and we play it. And we see that glue strength was still a little bit off because it looked like it was shattering before it actually landed. But that could be the internal striking of the die. The die are probably hitting it from the inside. So I could probably change that by moving the die upward because it didn't do that before. So the point is that we have all kinds of possibilities. So once again, this gives you an idea of a little bit more that you can do with this technique to be able to create some interesting ideas for your final animation. Because it doesn't have to be boring. You can make it interesting. You can make all kinds of things happen at the same time. You can even move the camera while it's doing that. And so those are just some general ideas just to keep you going. Our next lecture we'll talk about constraints because I do want to cover those, and then we'll go into particle dynamics.